In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about the new AI sensation, OpenClaw, or is it Moltbot, or is it CloudBot, or whatever you want to call it. This is something you don't want to miss. Let's get started. So, if you've been following any AI news over the last couple of months, especially over the last couple of weeks, you would have probably heard of this one name featuring over and over, which is CloudBot, or which is now called OpenClaw because of trademark and licensing issues. Perhaps also for a brief while, it was also called Moltbot. Now, OpenClaw, which is what it's currently called, and I hope it stays that way consistently in terms of the name. OpenClaw is a personal AI orchestrator system. The idea is that install this on a local machine that's yours, and it basically is an agent that allows you to run a personalized AI agent to do anything that you would potentially want, from summarize your emails to set up stuff in your calendar, to set up travel plans, to do anything that you could possibly think of, all through messaging apps, which means that this agent is going to essentially start talking to start being set up with multiple messaging apps like Telegram or WhatsApp or Discord or so on and so forth, and be used to send commands. So you could communicate with an agent saying, hey, do this, or book a flight from me from here to there, or do XYZ, or summarize my email and tell me how many GitHub PRs I need to do today, or anything like that, right? Any type of activity you can personally think of as something that you would like to get done by an automated AI agent, this is supposed to be able to do. OpenClaw has been able to do. Now, I did briefly set this up. I've not gone through it completely because I was really worried about security issues. And I've done a lot of research since then as to what OpenClaw is, how it works, how it's supposed to, what it's supposed to do, and of course, some of the major security issues that you're likely to see with OpenClaw, and some of the major security issues that you're likely to come across, and some of which doesn't really have very good protections with OpenClaw. So this video, I'm going to be focusing on security analysis of OpenClaw. Basically, what I'm going to do is talk about some of the high-level security issues, and then we're going to open up a security design review tool called SecurityReview.ai and analyze OpenClaw's code from a threat perspective or a security design perspective, and basically go over the code base of OpenClaw from that perspective and come up with what are the potential risks, and of course, some things you can do about it to a certain extent. But really, this is a security analysis video. I'm not going to be showing any specific demos as to how to set this up and so on. There are lots of those videos. You can check this out. And some of them, to be honest, really have no recourse at this point. So let's look at OpenClaw and see what are the security issues and do a security analysis of OpenClaw. So let's get started with understanding a little bit about what OpenClaw is and how it works. So if you look at OpenClaw, this is the architecture at a high level of what OpenClaw is. Now, OpenClaw is obviously the agent runtime, the agent harness, as well as the gateway that may be hosted on your local machine. You can obviously host the gateway elsewhere as well. In many cases, the gateway is hosted on the same machine. And now OpenClaw receives inputs from your messaging applications, right? So this is really what it's receiving inputs from and interacting. You're interacting with OpenClaw using all of these different messaging providers, and you authenticate to OpenClaw using these messaging providers. Once you do that, you essentially, OpenClaw talks to model providers for the AI inference part of it, and then uses tools and tool calls to perform multiple actions. It could be running a command, opening a browser, accessing an API, so on and so forth. Now, the big part of OpenClaw, as you might have seen so far, is skills. Now, skills is really what gives OpenClaw the ability to perform all these different actions. Now, skills, as you might have known, is basically a bunch of procedures or documents that contain instructions on how to perform certain actions. It could be talk to Gmail API or to Google Calendar API or do X, Y, or Z. The idea is that skills are a set of that can be used by anybody to train agents or pass this data to agents, and agents can figure out that, oh, this is what the user is expecting me to do, and this is the call I need to make, or this is the script I need to call, or this is the CLI I need to use in order to do all of those things. Now, skills are not innately a problem, but using skills that you don't know anything about could be a major supply chain risk. And that's really one of the major aspects that has been highlighted in OpenClaw, because OpenClaw, a lot of people are just seen installing scripts with a curl style, curl URL and then bash style environment. They're doing the same thing with just npx install script, blah, whatever script. And that script has, of course, not just markdown files and instructions. It has scripts it runs, CLIs that it runs, it downloads third-party code. It could do anything, right? This is really one of the, at the crux of things, this is really one of the big issues with OpenClaw, because I can trigger through these applications. So let's say I'm on a group chat on WhatsApp. Somebody with a malicious intent towards me can leverage OpenClaw on my computer or my server to exfiltrate data that's related to me by asking a message to OpenClaw to get some information or to provide some additional information. This is happening all the time. In fact, Moltbook, the social media that was basically for AI agents and basically has a bunch of AI agents, Moltbook has a ton of exfiltrated sensitive data that was pulled from OpenClaw and OpenClaw users that is becoming very, very dangerous. So this kind of gives you an idea of the blast radius of something like this, simply because there's really no control, so to speak. Of course, there are some controls, there is a sandbox and so on, but a lot of the users don't seem to understand the security risks of this. And this is really very, very dangerous thing that can happen. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to quickly explore OpenClaw as a threat model or a security design review using our tool SecurityReview.ai, which is an AI native threat modeling and security design review tool. So one of the things we have done, instead of taking documents from elsewhere, what we've done is we've just analyzed the entire repository of OpenClaw. So we have OpenClaw GitHub repository, which is an open source repository. We have literally taken that repository, pulled that into SecurityReview.ai. That gives you this code profile report, right? This code profile report essentially has all the major abstractions, the architecture, it generates diagrams. In fact, this is what you can actually use to make sense of a repository from an actual perspective. So you can use this as the input for your threat model or your security design review, and that's basically what Security Review helps you do. In this case, it generated this entire document with all of these things, right? It has the abstractions, the dependencies, infrastructure as code, as well as some basic summary patterns on threat modeling. And it generates all these images, it generates different patterns, it generates sequence diagrams as to what's happening in the code. It links different pieces of code together so that you can understand how the abstractions are working together. So it says that, okay, there are some capabilities here in terms of security. It also identifies the different database technologies, access patterns, some security concerns, as you can see, some of these things that are happening. It just gives you high-level security concerns, but this is what is used as the input for our threat model. And this is our threat model on OpenClaw. And you'll see that our threat model relies on a very repeatable step-by-step process of security objectives, data dictionary, which is basically generating all of the key information assets and sensitive data that are stored, processed, or transmitted by the system. So you can see that all of these have been captured: session files, OAuth tokens, asymmetric keys, database connection strings, API keys for the providers. All of that are data sets that are being passed back and forth in OpenClaw. The big thing that I want to talk about are the threat scenarios, because this is really what we need to focus on when it comes to OpenClaw, right? Now, OpenClaw, one of the things that we've done in Security Review is basically categorize it by this category system. This is called PWNISMS or PWNISMS. So it's product, workload, network, IAM, secrets, monitoring, and supply chain, right? So the idea is that you get a full stack threat analysis of all the layers in your application across all these different abstractions. So if you look at the product threats to OpenClaw, you'll really see some of the big ones coming up here, which is prompt injection using multi-provider AI gateway enabled unauthorized tool execution. Again, this, as you can see, is one of the big ones that we talked about just before this, which is that I can have indirect prompt injection. OpenClaw can read something from some malicious source and just act on those instructions. Yeah, this is a very real problem. Based on WhatsApp messages, Telegram, Slack, etc., I can do all of those things. Command injection via skill package argument. This is, again, one of those things that are pretty severe in terms of its impact, because skills, like I just spoke before when I was showing the architecture image, skills are a big way to compromise OpenClaw. People don't really validate what's in the skill. They don't read what's in the skill. OpenClaw obviously is going to act upon whatever skill you install. And if you have that skill invoked, then OpenClaw is going to orchestrate and use that skill to do X, Y, or Z. So that's really what's happening here. So this is product threats. Now let's go to another category of threats, which is your supply chain threats, which is again a very important category of threats when it comes to OpenClaw. And you'll see that there are lots of those as well. Malicious AI skill package, again, a very good find by Security Review because it identifies this as a major issue, right? This is a major issue. Man-in-the-middle attack on external script installation without checksum verification. Again, it talks about what I spoke about just before this, which is this kind of pattern to run so many different types of installations that are there. So this is actually reading the code base of OpenClaw and analyzing that from a security perspective and coming up with a threat scenario report, so to speak, and what could happen, right? It doesn't mean it will always happen. It just means that it is just doing a play-by-play of what could happen based on the information that it has, which is the entire GitHub repository. So this is what is happening here. You'll see a whole bunch of other ones which are very, very relevant based on OpenClaw's existing infrastructure. Now, if you see the other types of threats, I'll just quickly look at secrets now. And you'll see the secret threats are also quite a bit. And a lot of these threats relate to WebSockets simply because OpenClaw uses WebSockets extensively to do what it does, right? So you'll see that WebSocket related stuff is there. You'll see session credentials through plain text JSON-L files compromised, secret leakage, so on. So compromise of AI provided API keys. This is again one of the most common things that could happen, right? OpenClaw, remember, has AI. I mean, it has access to Bash and so on. It can literally just pull out sensitive information or secrets from files in the system, and that could be exposed to users who are not supposed to be accessing that, right? So that is something that you will see with OpenClaw. It uses Tailscale for a lot of the remote gateway bits. So that is also something that we've spoken about that has been identified as a threat scenario. And so this is something that you have. So there are a whole bunch of threat scenarios, as you can see. And we've basically organized it by category. So you basically use the same categories and we've identified different ones. You'll see the network threats and workload threats and logging, monitoring threats and so on. The idea is that you can use this methodology within Security Review to drill down to the specific threats that you want to analyze. And it's a much more repeatable methodology. So let's say you want to look at network threats. You will see those threats showing up on screen. Just network threats. So you'll see that the whole bunch of these things, DNS rebind related issues, fly.io, if it's deployed on fly.io, there may be an issue where this is not properly configured. Again, a lot of these happen to be configuration issues. So this is something that is very important to understand. So container network namespace, Docker socket issues, and so on. So this is something that you have with the OpenClaw threat scenarios. Now, if you look at the countermeasures, again, Security Review has done a pretty decent job of encapsulating the countermeasures, which is, again, we have a system of having neutralizing countermeasures, and then we have other types of countermeasures like high priority, and then medium priority and low priority countermeasures. You will see neutralizing basically means that applying this countermeasure will bring down the residual risk of a very serious threat down to zero, right? Or close to zero. So that's basically high ROI security controls. That's basically what neutralizing mechanism means. So you'll see that there are a whole bunch of these that have been recommended. Of course, for the AI prompt injection, there's a whole bunch of stuff that has been recommended as well. And you'll see that it has certain things. That this is largely to be done by the engineering team responsible for OpenClaw. So if OpenClaw ran their system through a threat model, they would get something like this, which they could use for actually tightening up their security. So that's the idea behind these countermeasures, and they're all linked to the different components. They have scores and they have residual risks and so on. So you will see that OpenClaw, I mean, what I wanted to say through this quick demonstration was that OpenClaw has very serious security issues that need to be considered. So it's obviously, since this is a watershed event in history when it comes to AI and personal AI and AI agents, I want everybody to understand the kind of impact this can potentially have on people running their AI agents in production, in a personal setting, in production settings, in an organization. All of this stuff can be very, very impactful. And OpenClaw kind of gives you an insight into the kind of destruction that can potentially happen when something like this is left unchecked. So this really is a watershed moment, not only in AI agents history, but also in AI security history, because people are understanding these exposures at viral scale. And that's something that I wanted to talk about and showcase in this video. I will try and share a detailed threat scenario report of OpenClaw for all of you to read in the show notes. And I'll also share the countermeasures. But I hope you found this useful. Thank you very much for watching. If you do like this sort of content, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel because it helps us out with the algorithm. Thank you so much.